Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources and really dig in. For, over 35 years now, Marge Simpson has been that constant voice of reason, hasn't she? The rock of the family in Springfield, you see that blue beehive?
Oh, absolutely. Instantly recognizable. The hair, the pearl necklace, that sort of distinctive grumble hum she does.
Yeah.
He's basically a cultural icon.
Totally. But what's really interesting, and maybe a bit weird, is how a character who feels so, safe, can be at the center of this really strange, almost kind of haunting question.
And that's exactly where we're heading today, isn't it?
Yeah. We are diving deep into a fan theory that asked something pretty shocking. Did Marge Simpson die?
I know, it sounds absurd when you first hear it. Like, how could Marge be dead?
Right. It feels unthinkable for such a core character. But that's our mission today, to unpack these fan theories, look at clues in certain episodes, maybe even some creator statements, things that suggest her fate might be a bit darker than we think.
It definitely makes you reconsider a character you thought you knew inside out.
Get ready to see Springfield's matriarch in maybe a whole new, slightly unsettling light.
Okay, so let's properly set the scene here. This whole unsettling idea, like we said, Marge Simpson is the matriarch, right? The voice of reason, the absolute rock of that family amid all the typical Simpsons chaos.
She really is. She holds Homer, Bart, Lisa, Maggie, all of them together, often against some pretty crazy odds. The glue, basically.
Exactly. So it feels, pretty wild to then hear this core fan belief that, despite her constant presence, her calming influence, there are hints scattered across episodes, lots of discussion online, especially on Reddit.
Yeah, those Reddit threads go deep.
That suggest Marge might actually be, already gone.
Gone. Passed on.
Gone. It's a huge claim for a character who's always there.
Yeah.
What makes fans even start thinking that? What's the starting point for that kind of speculation?
Well, one of the biggest theories, probably the most famous one, suggests that the whole show, The Simpsons, they're actually stuck in some kind of time loop. Okay, the time loop idea, I've heard that one. But how does Marge fit in?
Well, the theory goes that within this loop, Marge isn't actually physically present like the others. She's more like a ghost. Or a spirit guide, almost.
A ghost? Wow, okay, that is quite a theory.
Does
she interacts with them constantly. How does the theory explain that? What are the specific moments that make fans say, aha, ghost Marge?
Right, that's the tricky part. And where it gets interesting, fans point to specific episodes, like Bart gets a Z. There's a moment where she's seen sort of subtly disappearing in the background.
Disappearing, like fading out.
Yeah, or just, not quite there. And then there's Days of Future, where her behavior is just kind of strange.
Yeah.
Off somehow. It's not just one thing, it's these little patterns, unusual, sometimes detached reactions.
So it's more than just her being tired or, typically Marge level stressed. There are actual visual things or behavioral tics suggesting she's not fully solid.
That's how fans interpret it, yeah. Like the writers are embedding these little hints, whether intentionally or not, who knows? But the clues are there if you look.
Okay, so that's kind of the abstract, subtle clue theory. Let's maybe pivot to something more concrete. You mentioned specific episodes, and one that comes up a lot in these discussions is Gone Boy from season 29.
Ah, yes, Gone Boy.
Yeah.
That episode is definitely a critical piece for people who buy into this theory. The basic plot is Bart goes missing. But not just for a day or two, for years.
Years? Wow, okay, I remember that one.
And eventually he comes back. The family's obviously changed, dealt with the trauma, but it's Marge's reaction when he finally returns. That's what fans find particularly unsettling.
Unsettling how, though? I mean, wouldn't she just be overjoyed, relieved? What happens that feeds this whole Marge is dead idea?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But she seems, especially quiet, distant, almost muted when he comes back. It's not the huge, emotional, embracing Marge you'd expect after years of him being gone. It's this sustained lack of typical Marge warmth. And it makes you wonder, did something profound happen to her during Bart's absence? Something that broke her?
So it's almost like an emotional death, or maybe a complete shutdown. The theory isn't necessarily saying she's literally a ghost in this episode, but maybe symbolically dead.
Exactly. That's a big part of the interpretation. Is it a coded message from the writers? Is it a visual metaphor for the psychological toll, the grief, essentially killing a part of her?
That adds a layer, doesn't it? Beyond just, is she a ghost? It's about symbolic death, emotional death.
Precisely. It pushes you to think about how characters can experience different kinds of death within a story. It's maybe more nuanced than people first assume. Easy to miss if you're not looking for it.
Okay, right. Now, we can't really talk about weird fan theories in The Simpsons without touching on the Treehouse of Horror specials.
That's definitely not the Halloween specials.
Everyone knows the deal with those, right? They're totally non-canonical, just pure fun, wild, over-the-top segments where anything goes. They don't connect to the main storyline at all.
It's the writer's playground, basically. Break all the rules.
Exactly. But even though they're not real in the Simpsons universe, fans still bring them up in these Marge discussions, right?
They do, frequently. And what's interesting is, well, Marge dies quite a few times in these alternate realities.
Right. I remember some pretty gruesome ones. Doesn't she turn into some kind of giant monster in one?
Yep. And then there's the one where Maggie, of all characters, chops her up. It's pretty dark, even for Treehouse of Horror.
Whoa, yeah. So, okay, they're not canon, but why do fans latch on to these specific violent deaths as evidence for the main theory? What's the connection they're making?
It's mostly about the symbolism again. Some fans see these repeated, often gruesome, non-canon deaths as a kind of dark foreshadowing. Yeah. Or maybe a metaphor for Marge slowly fading in importance, or even the writers getting tired of her character after so long.
That's a pretty dark thought itself. That maybe even the creators, subconsciously or not, are playing with this idea of her demise, even if it's just for laughs in a Halloween special.
It definitely raises questions, doesn't it? About artistic license, dark humor, and maybe even underlying commentary on the nature of long-running characters. Is it just a gag, or is there something more buried in there?
It does make you wonder. So we've got the spectral hints, the unsettling Gone Boy episode, the symbolic treehouse deaths. But is this all just fans reading way too much into a cartoon? What do the actual creators say about Marge's status?
Well, Matt Groening, the creator, he's been pretty consistent with his official line on this kind of thing. His stance has always been, the Simpsons characters don't age. The show is meant to be a satire of American life, not a reflection of reality. It's a kind of timeless, unchanging world.
Right. No aging, no major permanent changes. That seems pretty definitive. Cut and dry.
It does.
And yet, these theories persist. People keep finding these clues. Is there something about animation maybe that just invites these deeper reads, even when the creator says, nope, that's not what's happening?
I think so. Animators, writers, they are known for slipping in dark humor, visual gags, even things that can be interpreted as symbolic death. It's part of the medium sometimes.
Okay.
So even if Groening says Marge isn't literally dead, this idea that her death could be symbolic, that still holds water for a lot of people. And that brings us to maybe the most powerful interpretation of all.
Which is?
That Marge's perceived death isn't physical at all, but emotional. It's about burnout.
Ah, like the burnout of the classic American mother archetype, the homemaker.
Think about it. What's Marge's role? Constant cleaning, cooking, mediating fights, managing Homer, carrying the emotional weight for the entire family. Day in, day out, for decades.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. It's portrayed humorously, obviously. But the underlying reality is this slow, draining process. So, in that sense, her death becomes this really potent metaphor for that kind of deep weariness, the emotional exhaustion that builds up until it feels like it's killed a part of your spirit.
Wow. And that resonates way beyond just a cartoon character, doesn't it? It taps into something very real about societal pressures, about the often invisible labor of caregivers.
It really does.
It kind of elevates the whole theory. It's not just, is Marge a secret ghost, but maybe a commentary on something much deeper, something a lot of people might connect with.
It certainly adds this whole compelling, almost tragic layer to her character, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even while she's still there making that humming noise.
So, okay, let's try and pull this all together. What have we learned from this this deep dive into Marge's mortality?
Well, when you weave together all these threads, you've got the eerie fan theories, the time loop, the ghost idea.
Yeah.
Then the subtle clues in episodes like Gone Boy, those non-canon deaths in Treehouse of Horror, and even factoring in Groening's official stance.
Yeah.
It seems clear Marge Simpson probably isn't literally dead in the show's main reality.
Okay, right. That seems the most logical conclusion.
But that emotional weight, those symbolic suggestions, those moments in episodes, you just feel off. They're persistent. They consistently leave fans wondering, and maybe for good reason. There's something there.
It definitely casts her character in a different light. Her constant presence feels maybe a bit more melancholic now, or at least more complex.
I think so. It adds layers you might not have considered before.
Absolutely. So here's a final thought for you, the listener. The next time you're watching The Simpsons, maybe an older episode, maybe a new one, and you notice something just a little peculiar about Marge, A strange reaction, a quiet moment that lingers. Maybe it's not just your imagination.